Hello, everyone. Welcome to Refined Improvement. On today's podcast, we're back again, and today we'll be discussing economics and the impacts of economics on modern economics and the economy on self-improvement. So, would you like to get us started?
Sure thing. So I think that you know a little bit more about the economy than I do, but the biggest way from my point of view that the modern economy is impacting self-improvement is, well, there's really two things. The biggest thing is that it's a lot harder to become independent and self-sufficient. The housing market is absolutely wild. Houses around where I live or in my neighborhood I've seen go from being worth around 600,000 to somewhere around a million just in the span of a year, which is wild. And a big part of self-improvement is becoming an independent, career-focused, strong, a man who can provide.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't even buy a house, how are you going to convey that image?
Yeah. In your personal opinion, would you say that the area that you reside in, so the location where you plan to live, can affect kind of how you go about this?
I would say for sure, because a lot of self-improvement is networking, and a lot of self-improvement is mental clarity. And if you live in a place with not a lot of people who own houses, they're renting, or a lot of homeless people like LA, you're not going to have the same connections that you might if you were living in a place where more people owned houses, more people were better off.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a really bad living situation, it can mess with your mental focus, mental clarity, and stop you from improving yourself.
Yeah, I would have to agree there, and I would say that especially the housing market is a big indicator of global economic trends. So I would have to agree with you when you say that it's harder for people to purchase decent housing. And when I say decent housing, I mean I don't mean like a mansion. I mean housing that you could live in comfortably, right? And I do see that as a huge issue, especially for people who are trying to build up a routine. To help them kind of like build their self-improvement, and they just aren't able to get housing because of how the market is just fluctuating right now. And I believe that is a huge issue that we see a lot of people facing today, in terms of finding adequate housing, being able to support themselves, because the economy, especially I would look at the trends from the past, let's call it 3 years. Within that 3-year period, inflation has increased by an enormous amount. I mean, I think it's almost 2%, if I'm not wrong. And that's crazy to me that the value of the dollar has changed by that much. And 2% seems like a small number, but there's statistics out there that from around the 1990s, we've seen a 12% increase in the value of the dollar. And that goes from buying a can of Coca-Cola, which I don't know if you remember when we were like, really, really small. You could probably get it for 99 cents. Now you have to pay $3 for a small can of Coke, right? It's astounding to me. And that's an issue we see many people facing, and the value of that dollar bill is just going to keep increasing, and unfortunately that's going to make it harder, which leads me to my next question. What do you think about the value of education? And I'm talking about two types of education here. First is the ability to go to college, so having a proper education, getting a degree, and getting a 9 to 5, your standard corporate job. And then second is financial literacy. So why don't we start with the first one? What's your opinion on like a college degree, a 9 to 5, corporate jobs, and that impact on self-improvement?
Sure. So I think that in the self-improvement community, especially with all the hustle culture being such a prominent topic in the community, there is a big emphasis on college is a waste of your time. I dropped out of college, now I'm making $250K a year with Hustlers University,
Mm-hmm.
Or the real world or something like that. But I think that if you have the financial freedom to go to college, you should definitely go to college, because people that go to college make more money than people that don't go to college. And it's as simple as that, really, right? I think that all the hate for college or all the negativity towards it It's really just unjustified. It's uneducated. And even Andrew Tate, who is a big building block, he provides these online courses. Even I remember there are interviews of him saying, yeah, if you can go to college, if you can be happy working a 9 to 5, do that. And I think that there is a lot of growth there, a lot of success, a lot of financial growth that you can get from going to college, going to medical school, going to law school. These things give you guaranteed income, which is very, very important because you want to grow consistently. And if you want to grow consistently, you need consistent income.
And then a little sub question here. What about a 9 to 5 versus like a more humble job? So I'm talking, construction. I'm talking, your plumbers, your electricians, your necessities, like the people that someone working a 9 to 5 would call to help him out in his everyday life, And I'm talking, I'm saying that these jobs, they are like necessities for our everyday lives. So what about this versus 9 to 5 in your opinion?
So this is what you've got to think about. As you talked about with inflation, what's happening is you used to have a lot of people who were decently well off and a few really rich people and a few really poor people. Nowadays, I think you know all about this, right? The middle class is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And because of that, there's becoming more and more and more rich people and more really poor people. And I think that it's important to remember that even though we're kind of getting into this extreme, if you can make a nice, solid income with like a trade, like carpenting or whatever, it's not going to be as good for you in the sense that you're not going to be making as much money, you're not going to be viewed as successful. But if people didn't do those jobs, society would just fall apart,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I mean, those are great jobs.
And they're very noble jobs, right?
Yes, they are. Yeah. Yeah, and then what about the second question? So financial literacy, because something I've seen is that more and more, especially within my friend group and my community, I see people coming to me and being like, Anoop, I see that you're starting to make a little bit of money. How are you doing it? And then how are you trading stocks? What are you doing? And I just believe that it's kind of something that we got to look at. So financial literacy. How do you think that affects self-improvement?
I think that if you want to be successful as a man in today's life, you need money. And how you get money is becoming financially literate. I think a lot of people, especially, in our grade, in our general age group, are really afraid of looking more into finances, investing into stocks, looking at opportunities like that because they think they will fail. They think like, oh, if I put $1,000 in the stocks and I see where that goes, what if I lose it all? And that is something that's really scary. But if you aren't willing to take the first steps into growing your wealth, growing your income, then you're just not going to succeed at all. So I think that becoming financially literate, even just watching YouTube videos, reading books, educating yourself, it's something that you need to do in order to improve yourself.
Yeah, I agree. And one tip I like to give everyone who asks me this question is that diversifying your portfolio, diversifying your money. Honestly, diversifying anything you do in your life is probably the best thing. But
what do you mean by that? How would you describe that to someone that didn't know what it was?
So basically, when I talk about money, I mean you should have a little bit of money coming from the stock market. You should have a little bit of money coming from most of your money should always come from some sort of job, right? Some sort of stable job that you're working on, right? For this example, let's consider these side hustles as a job, right? Even though they're not, that should be another source of income. But let's consider them into this big job, right? So that's your first source of income. Then the stock market. I think it's a great thing to learn how the market works, especially since it can impact how you deal with money in your life, right? So if you see the market is coming down, that's a sign to kind of like you can purchase a little bit more high-end things because the price of everything is going to come down a little bit, and then the third thing is that I think is really important, especially with the housing market. It's a little less stable, but real estate is so important. You should be having at least 1 to 3 properties if you can afford it. 1 to 3 properties, like you can get them cheap. You can renovate them over time. Pay off the mortgage and rent them. I mean, that's an amazing source of income right there, So I think that those three are a great example of a not super diverse portfolio, but a diverse portfolio. Now let's take these side hustles out, right? This hustle culture. Let's take them out of the equation. Let's say this is your 9 to 5, your nice job, your stable job, right? Now we're gonna bring in the side hustles. So now in side hustles, I would say if you're successful, that's a very very big opportunity for growth, especially
with minimal risk too.
Exactly. So now you have two big sources of income and then two small sources of income, right? That's a diverse portfolio. That's how you maximize your money. And especially with something like the stock market, your money is making you money. That's how I like to put it. Your money is making you money. And then once you get, a little more stable, you're financially stable, you have a little pocket change. What I like to say is that look at what's new and dip your toe in it, right? So like let's say crypto, for example. Buy a little bit of Bitcoin when it's really, when it was down, you could have bought a little Bitcoin, right? If there's a new coin out there, if there's new, like NFTs, not that I'm like super endorsing NFTs, but like if you dip your foot in it, you try it out, you see what kind of value it has. You try that out for a little bit of everything, right? You might lose a little money here, you might gain a little money here. But sometimes, and I see this a lot, especially now that people are like realizing the value of Bitcoin, because it's all over the news now, right? Like Bitcoin is like $25,000 now, and people who way back when it started bought like a ton of Bitcoin, they're rich now.
Crazy
rich. It's crazy. I mean, earlier today I was I saw a video on YouTube, and it was this dude who lost his private key. So for those of you who don't know, you have a private key, and that's basically your password to access your Bitcoin. And he lost it, so he had someone like hack into this device to get him the private key, and he made $2 million on the spot right there, just like that, because he had Bitcoin. It's crazy how it works. So things like that. That's how you diversify your portfolio, and doing things like that can make you money, and that money can lead you to become financially stable. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not like we can talk about it all day. It's not easy, but it's something that should be learn. Do your own research, think about it, and then go ahead and do it.
Yeah, I want to kind of take the conversation in a bit of a different direction and talk about why money is so important to become successful. And a lot of times I hear people on the left or people in general in our school saying like, you don't need money to attract women, or you don't need money to be happy, or you don't need money to feel fulfilled. And while that is true, what's good about money isn't that you have money. What's good about money is the lifestyle that having money gets you.
Yeah. So the big thing there is that yes, you don't need money to a certain extent. You don't need money to be happy, but like, let's be honest here. If you have like if you don't have the money to get like decent clothes, if you don't have the money to kind of
eat well,
and that's almost a reflection of your personal character, even if it's out of your control. And that's the unfortunate truth. People with money just happen to be like if you have money, you're just going to attract more, especially with women, you're going to attract more women because you have the facilities. And yes, there's a certain boundary where like, yeah, okay, I have this much money, I'm fine now. There's a certain range,
What would you say that number is? Me personally, I don't ever imagine I'm going to get this rich. But someday if I hit around $10 million total, not like in stocks, but like liquefied $10 million, I'm like, okay, I don't ever need to work again. I can sit down, I can get a family, and I can live a very above average, not like some crazy life, but a very nice life is what I would say.
Yeah, so I would agree with that. For me, I see it more as how much money you're making per year. And the reason for this is that there's a certain point, especially for people who are doing those side hustles, and I see this a lot in business owners. It's based off how much revenue, not your company or not your side hustles, but you're making every year after tax. So before tax, I'd like to think about it as around $250,000
a year.
A year. That's prime right there. That's like where That's my goal. That's where I tell people you want to be. You want to be around that mark, 200 to 250K every year. Um, I feel like if you're not in a family right now, if you're alone, and you just want to kind of live your life for a little bit, I would say push that number down to around like 150 to 180.
To live really comfortably.
Honestly, if you're living alone, 150 to 180, you're gonna be comfortable. And then once you reach that 200 to 250, consider a family. Because that at that point, 250K per year, you're way well off to be supporting a
Well,
family.
once you have 250, I think you're in the top 20% of earners.
Yeah, just
But
about.
I know that 6 figures puts you in, I think, the top 30%. And I think that 400K puts you like within the top 1 to 2%, like very high up there. One thing I wanted to kind of talk about, because we're talking about some big numbers here. End game, you're like 30 years old, you've been working on this for quite some time. One of the biggest issues I see in self-improvement and just in culture today is that everyone can go online on Instagram and see Andrew Tate, Tristan Tate, all of these crazy rich guys, crazy influential guys. And their perception of what a normal income is very skewed.
Yeah. So, one statistic I'd like to point to is undergraduate, straight out of college, fresh job. So, we're going to take 3 different industries here. So, the first industry we're going to take is computer science. So, computer science is one of, if not the highest paying industry you can come out of. And right now, the range for when you come fresh out of college is for smaller corporations that hire straight out of college, you're looking at a 90K per year salary, all the way up to a 150K salary, right? So that's the highest end of the spectrum. Now let's look at more so a median range. So for this, I like to look into materials engineering, and the reason is this is the kind of it's a very it's almost, I would consider, like the most niche field of engineering, and the reason for that is that people don't really know about it, but it's really essential for us, so if you're hired by an engineering firm as a materials engineer, you'd be making around 75 to 120K straight out of college. And then for the third degree, let's go to a science major. So a biologist, so a biology major, they'll be making anywhere from I would say around 60 to 70 as they're starting as the very low. That for especially for science majors, that low bar is usually never seen. And then they go up to around 100, 110 as their high range for salary. So realistically, I would say that you should set your expectations for your first kind of earning year to be around like 85 to 90K post or pre-tax, And,
well, that's for someone that was able to go through college.
Yeah, and if you're working minimum wage, which is it's especially those minimum wage jobs are necessary for all of us. If you're working minimum wage, you're gonna need to take certain liberties, but for those, I think it would be around. I would have to do the math for that.
I'd estimate around 15 to 30K.
Yeah. 30, I would say, is kind of the upper bound on that.
Yeah, that's what I'd say. The thing that I would say is that sometimes your financial status is out of your control. Now, there are ways that you can level it up. I forget what the guy's called. It's like keto bodybuilder or something, but this guy's pretty jacked and he's like, I refuse to be broke.
Mm-hmm.
When I didn't have a college degree or whatever, I just worked 4 jobs and I made the most money that I could and I did this. And that is a very admirable way to do it. And if you can do it, if you have the motivation, if you have that purpose in you, then I would say you should do that. My biggest kind of tip, though, is that if you are making money that isn't hitting the modern day standards for what you should be making, right? Which unfortunately can be like 100K. Like, there's all these interviews like where guys are talking to women and it's like, oh, the woman's just like a normal looking person and they don't have a job and they just live a normal life. And it's like, oh, okay. what would you say your man should make? To like at least 400,000.
And that's crazy to me. Like the expectation is going up and up, and I would say like currently so this is going to increase, but at the moment the middle class, what you want to be making, if you're like going to survive in that middle class, is around 100K. I would say
Which is fine.
Yeah.
You can live a good life at 100K.
And 100K, honestly, it depending on where you live, if you're renting a house, like you could live like a very very nice life, a very modest life. But then I would say in the next 8 years, 4 to 8 years, this is the issue. That's gonna go up to around 130K.
The middle class is shrinking. But the tip I was going to say is that if you're not where you need to be financially, at the very least, you need to have everything on lock that isn't finances, right? So I could totally see there being a very popular, successful, community integrated, great, like good man making less than 100K a year if he's like built.
Yeah.
And he's like super nice to everyone. He meditates. He's like super present. He's super kind to everyone.
It's a balance.
Exactly. And if you have some of the other assets that come with self-improvement, like mental clarity or a healthy body and healthy relationships, you can still live a really great life. What happens is that people lack the fundamentals of community and the fundamentals of a healthy body and healthy relationships, even if that's just friendships. Like there's so many people that are just in their rooms on Discord, working online, no community.
Yeah.
And because of that, they look to finances and they're like, this is my way out of this. But if you can't make yourself, get as much money as you think you need, at least try to focus on other things.
Yeah. I do agree with that. And one thing that I would argue is that there is that balancing act. It kind of scales. So let me explain what I mean. So, like you said, you could have like a super like chill dude, and he's not exactly making like so much money. He's less than 100K mark. But then you could have like someone who's making that 400K every year, but he's just a jerk and a terrible person. And I think that's where like that balance.
Not even a jerk in a cool way, like in an alpha way. Just like a weirdo.
Yeah, he's a weirdo, and he's just like, he has like zero respect for the people around him. And I think that's another kind of area where it's like, you don't want to be like if you're rich, like yeah, that's cool, but don't let that get to your head. Like you should still have the same like no matter what, if you're a guy, you should have the same level of humility, humbleness, and respect for the people around you and the community that you reside in. So like if you're rich, use that one. I would say that don't let that get to your head. Stay respectful, stay humble. And then another thing is that you should be helping out your community, right?
Yeah, I heard a great quote. I don't know who said this quote, but it's that money doesn't make you good, money doesn't make you bad. Money makes you more of who you are because money gives you the ability to do more things.
Yeah.
So if you are a guy that cares about the community, cares about charity, cares about growing the town or city that he's in, and suddenly he's given $1 million, right? Maybe half of that, 3/4 of that is going to him and his family, but he might be donating hundreds of thousands of dollars to helping those in need, which is a great thing to do.
Yes.
Even if it isn't necessarily going to make you an alpha male to support your community, it has such a good mental health reward to integrate yourself, right?
It feels good.
So recently, one of the things that I started doing within the last year, even though it's not going to make me more money or build my body, is just join a bunch of different clubs and activities at my school. And dude, the reward on that has been insane because meeting all these new people, just learning more and more about all types of new topics, it can help you out so much in just advancing who you are as a person.
I have to agree with that. Especially because communication and outreach is a critical part of life. I mean, it's just you whether it's within personal, so communicating with your friends, or whether it's in a professional kind of way. Communicating with the people around you, communicating with potential clients, things like that, or even just communicating with your colleagues and your boss. All of these things can kind of affect the way that you both work and affect the way that you are seen in the community. I think that's just a really critical thing. That it's lost focus because now everyone's just like money, 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 make money, make money. Don't worry about what happens when you make money. Just make money and join this like super rich hustle lifestyle.
Yeah, in terms of the communication thing, so many times in my life, I'm sure you've seen this. We've seen someone who is good at communicating, and we talk to them. They're like, "Oh, hey man, what's up?" And we think we're really close, and then that person's a really bad guy.
Yeah.
Or I've actually seen the opposite a lot too, where someone comes off as kind of shy, kind of strange, and you get to know them, and it turns out, oh, they're doing all this great stuff. They're working really hard. They've got such ambitions, and it's like the way that you come across is an asset.
Yes.
That's actually probably the biggest reason why you should look better, talk better, present yourself nicer with clothes, so that the impression, like, I think there's that quote that's like, humans can form an impression in like 1/10 of a second. It's so that when somebody sees the way that you act, instantly they're like, oh, I want to be friends with that guy.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to date that guy. Oh, I want to give that guy my money. Like subconsciously.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that this was a great discussion about kind of how economics can impact, self-improvement, how the economy can impact self-improvement, and just I think there were a lot of good things discussed about kind of
Networking in general.
working and what a person could do. So thank you guys for watching as always, and we hope that you can use this information to help you in your everyday lives.
Thank you very much. Peace.